The orc woman stood in the middle of the wrong man's stable, clutching papers she could not read, while the finest horse she had ever seen tried to kill him. Sera Cutler had walked 3 days from the mountain passes to reach this valley, following the matchmaker's hastily drawn map and the old woman's wheezing instructions. She was meant to work for a rancher, the papers said, though she had needed the village scribe to read them aloud before she left. Honest work with horses, room and board, respectable employment far from the border wars that had scattered her clan. The matchmaker had taken her coins and patted her hand with fingers bent like tree roots, assuring her that the position was perfect, just perfect, and that she should follow the road to the stable with the red door. This stable had a red door. It also had a man being dragged across the dirt by a gray filly whose eyes showed too much white. Sera dropped her traveling pack and moved without thinking. She vaulted the fence rail, her long legs clearing it easily despite the worn boots that pinched her toes. The man lost his grip on the lead rope as the horse reared. Sera caught the rope as it whipped past, wrapping it once around her forearm and setting her weight against the filly's momentum. The horse wheeled toward her, nostrils flared. Sera went still. She did not pull the rope or speak. She simply stood, green fingers loose on the lead, and waited. The filly snorted, stamped, tested the rope with a sideways jerk of her elegant head. Sera breathed slowly and let the rope stay slack. After a long moment, the filly's ears swiveled forward. Sera took one small step closer, then stopped again. The man picked himself up from the dirt, dusting off his trousers with deliberate motions. He was tall, perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and a jaw that looked like it had been carved with an axe. His eyes were gray as winter clouds and just as hard to read. He watched Sera with an expression that might have been surprise or might have been nothing at all. "You hurt?" Sera asked, not taking her eyes from the filly. "No." His voice was low and rough, like he did not use it often. "Good." Sera took another step toward the horse. The filly blew hard through her nose but did not retreat. "She is scared, not mean. She has thrown 4 men this month. Then 4 men did not listen." Sera extended her free hand, palm up, letting the filly investigate her scent. The horse lipped at her fingers, found nothing, and settled slightly. Sera stroked the side of the filly's face, careful to avoid the sensitive nose and ears. "There, you are all right. Nothing here will hurt you." She could feel the man staring at her. Most humans did. Her green skin marked her as other, as enemy, as the thing their soldiers fought at the borders. Her tusks were small, barely protruding past her upper lip, but they were visible when she spoke. Her ears came to gentle points beneath her black braid. She had learned to move carefully around humans, to make herself smaller and quieter, to apologize for her existence with every breath. But she was good with horses. That much she knew. The filly's head lowered, and Sera scratched behind her ears. "What is her name?" "Ash." "Ash," Sera repeated softly. "That suits you, doesn't it, girl?" She glanced at the man over the horse's neck. "I am Sera Cutler. The matchmaker sent me. I am here to work with the horses." The man's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. "The matchmaker?" "Yes." "Old woman, bent fingers," Sera gestured vaguely. "She said the rancher needed help. She gave me papers. Let me see them." Sera hesitated, then slowly walked Ash toward the fence, keeping her movements smooth and unhurried. The filly followed without resistance. Sera tied her loosely to the rail, leaving enough slack that she would not feel trapped, then retrieved the folded documents from her coat pocket. The man took them, his calloused fingers brushing hers for a fraction of a second. He read in silence. Sera waited, trying not to fidget under that steady gray stare. She could not tell what he was thinking. Most humans wore their hatred openly, but this man's face was a closed book. Finally, he looked up. "You were meant for Thomas Blackwood's ranch, 10 miles west over the ridge." Sera's stomach dropped. "I went to the wrong place. The matchmaker sent you to the wrong place." He folded the papers and handed them back. "These are not employment contracts. They are not." "No," he paused, jaw working as if the words cost him. "They are marriage brokerage agreements." The world tilted sideways. Sera stared at the papers in her hand as if they had transformed into snakes. Marriage. Blackwood contracted for a bride. Paid the matchmaker's fee months ago, according to these dates. The man's voice was carefully neutral. "You were supposed to arrive at his ranch yesterday, but I paid for work placement." Sera's mind spun. "I gave her all my coin. She said it was a job with horses. She said she is nearly blind and handles a dozen arrangements a week." The man glanced toward the road, then back at Sera. "Blackwood will be looking for you. He is not a patient man." Sera felt something cold settle in her chest. She had spent her last coins on the matchmaker's fee. She had no way to return home, even if there was a home to return to. The war had destroyed her village. Her clan was scattered. She had come to the human lands because starving alone in the mountains was a slower death than taking her chances here. And now she was apparently contracted to marry a stranger. "I should go," she said quietly. "If you can tell me the correct direction, I will leave now." The man looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Ash, who was watching Sera with calm interest, head low and ears relaxed. The filly had not looked that calm since he had bought her 6 weeks ago. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Yes." "Work leather, mend tack?" "Yes." "Muck stalls, haul water, turn difficult horses?" "I can do all of that." Sera straightened her shoulders. "I am a good worker. I do not complain or cause trouble. I only need a place to sleep and food to eat. I will earn my keep." The man was quiet again, his gray eyes moving over her face as if memorizing it. Sera felt heat rise in her cheeks and looked away. She was used to humans staring at her, but not like this. Not with this peculiar intensity that made her feel seen rather than examined. "What is your name?" she asked, more to break the silence than because she expected to stay long enough for it to matter. "Thorne Cutler." He caught her surprise. "No relation, I would guess." "Cutler is a common name." Sera managed a weak smile. "I took it when I came south." "My clan name is not easy for human tongues." Thorne nodded. Then, in a voice so low she almost missed it, he said, "I need help with the horses. The position is open if you want it." Sera blinked. "But the papers are between you and Blackwood, not me." "If you want to honor them, I will lend you a horse and draw you a proper map. If you want to work, I pay a silver piece a week, plus room and a share of meals. You would sleep in the loft above the tack room. It is clean and warm." "Why would you do this?" "I need the help." Thorne glanced at Ash again. "And you are good with horses." It was the simplest reason in the world. Sera wanted to believe it, but she had learned caution the hard way, and kindness from humans always came with a hidden cost. "What about Blackwood?" "If I stay here, if I do not go to his ranch, what will he do? Be angry?" Thorne's expression did not change. "But the contract is with you, not me. You are free to choose your own employment. If he comes here making trouble, I will handle it." "You will handle a wealthy rancher who believes he paid for a bride?" "Yes." There was no bravado in the word, just flat certainty. Sera studied him more carefully. He was lean rather than heavily built, his frame suggesting strength earned through work rather than natural bulk. His clothes were mended but clean, his hands scarred from rope and reins. This was not a rich man's stable. The fences needed repair, the barn roof showed patches, and she could see only 4 other horses in the paddock beyond. He was offering her a choice when she had none. That alone was more than most humans had ever given her. 1 week, she said. I will work 1 week and we will see if it suits us both. If Blackwood comes and makes too much trouble, I will go. I will not bring danger to someone who has shown me kindness. Thorne's mouth almost curved. Not quite a smile, but something gentler than the hard line it had been. Fair enough. Come inside. You should eat something before you start work. He turned and walked toward the small house attached to the barn, expecting her to follow. Sera collected her pack, gave Ash a final pat, and trailed after him. She told herself this was temporary, that she would earn a few coins, find a better situation, and leave before Blackwood discovered the matchmaker's error. She told herself not to notice the way Thorne had looked at her, or the careful distance he had kept, as if afraid his presence might frighten her. She told herself many things that afternoon. None of them were true. The house was small and spare, the kind of place where a single man lived without a woman's touch to soften the edges. A table, 2 chairs, a narrow bed in the corner, a fireplace with a kettle hanging over low flames. Thorne ladled stew into a wooden bowl and set it before her without ceremony. He poured water from a pitcher, placed a heel of brown bread beside the bowl, and then stood awkwardly as if unsure what to do next. Sit, Sera said. Please. I feel strange eating while you stand. He sat across from her but did not take food for himself. Sera ate slowly, trying not to show how hungry she was. The stew was simple, venison and turnips and barley, but it was hot and well seasoned. She had been eating travel rations for days. This tasted like a feast. When did you last have a hired hand? She asked between bites. 3 months ago. He left to work for Blackwood, better pay. Why did you not match his offer? Could not afford it. Thorne's voice was matter of fact. I breed horses, not cattle. It takes years to build a reputation. Most people in the valley buy from the big ranches. But you have Ash, she is quality. She is. If I can break her properly and prove her temperament, I can sell her line for good money. But if she stays wild, she is worthless. Sera glanced toward the barn. She is not wild. She is afraid. Someone hurt her before you bought her. The drover I got her from was rough. Thorne's jaw tightened. I did not know until I got her home. She was calm in the sale pen. They probably drugged her. Sera sopped the last of the stew with her bread. I have seen it before. Unscrupulous traders will dose a horse with poppy milk to make them tractable, then sell them before it wears off. When the new owner tries to work them, the horse panics because they remember the cruelty but not why. Can she be healed? Yes. It will take time and patience, but yes. Sera met his eyes. I can do it if you will let me. Thorne nodded slowly. Then that is your first task. Show me you can turn Ash into a sound mount and the position is yours permanently. And if Blackwood comes, then we will deal with it. Thorne rose and collected her empty bowl. The loft is through the barn, rear left corner. There is a ladder. I put fresh straw up there this morning and left blankets on the chest. Outhouse is behind the barn. Well is beside it. If you need anything, knock on the door. He was dismissing her, not unkindly but with a clear end to the conversation. Sera stood, shouldering her pack. Thank you, for the food and the chance. You earned it when you caught that rope. Thorne rinsed the bowl in a bucket by the door. Most people would have run from a rearing horse. I am not most people. No. He glanced back at her, and for a moment something raw and hungry flickered in those gray eyes. No, you are not. Sera left before she could think too hard about what that look meant. The loft was small but clean, just as he had promised. The blankets were worn but warm. She could hear the horses moving below, the soft sounds of hay being pulled from racks and hooves shifting in straw. It was a peaceful sound, familiar. Sera lay down on the narrow cot and stared at the ceiling beams. She was in the wrong place with the wrong papers, running from a marriage contract she had never agreed to, working for a man who looked at her like she was something precious and breakable. Nothing about this made sense, and yet she felt safer here than she had in months. Below, she heard Thorne moving through the barn, checking the horses one last time before full dark. His footsteps were quiet, his voice when he spoke to the animals a low murmur. Sera closed her eyes and listened, letting the rhythm of his movements lull her toward sleep. She would worry about Blackwood tomorrow. The week passed like water slipping through her fingers. Sera rose before dawn and worked until her muscles ached. She mucked stalls, hauled water, mended a broken section of fence, and oiled every piece of tack in the barn until the leather gleamed. Thorne worked beside her, saying little but watching everything. She caught him staring sometimes, his expression unreadable, and when their eyes met he would look away quickly, as if caught doing something shameful. But the real work, the work that mattered, was with Ash. Sera spent hours in the paddock with the filly, doing nothing but standing nearby. She did not approach, did not reach out, simply existed in the same space and let Ash decide when and how to close the distance. By the third day, the filly was following her around the enclosure, nosing at her pockets hopefully. By the fifth day, Sera could run her hands over every part of Ash's body without the horse flinching. Thorne watched from the fence, his arms resting on the top rail. "You have a gift, no gift. Just patience," Sera scratched under Ash's jaw, "and respect. She tells me what she needs, I listen. Most people do not listen to horses. Most people do not listen at all." Sera smiled at him, and for the first time she saw him almost smile back. It transformed his face, softening the hard lines and making him look younger. Handsome, even in a rough-hewn way. She looked away quickly, her cheeks warming. This was employment, nothing more. She could not afford to think of him as anything other than a fair boss who had given her a chance. Even if he did bring her coffee in the mornings without being asked, and even if he had noticed, she was left-handed and moved the tools to her preferred side of the workbench. And even if sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression so tender, it made her chest ache. On the seventh day, a rider came up the road. Sera was in the barn, brushing down one of the geldings when she heard the hoofbeats. She knew immediately, in the way prey animals know when a predator is near, that this was trouble. She set down the brush and moved to the barn door, staying in the shadows. The man who dismounted in the yard was broad and prosperous, his coat well-tailored, his horse expensive. He was perhaps 40, with a thick beard going gray and eyes like chips of flint. He did not bother tying his horse, simply dropped the reins and strode toward Thorne, who had emerged from the house. "Cutler," the man said. His voice was deep and carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "We need to talk. Blackwood." Thorne stopped a few paces away, his posture relaxed but his eyes wary. "What brings you here?" "You know damn well what brings me here." Blackwood's gaze swept the yard, the barn, and landed on Sera in the doorway. His expression hardened. "There she is." Sera stepped into the sunlight, lifting her chin. She would not cower. "I am Sera Cutler. You are Sera Nothing, the orc woman I paid good money for." Blackwood started toward her. "You were supposed to arrive at my ranch 6 days ago. The matchmaker finally confessed her error this morning. Said you came here instead." "It was an accident," Sera said. "The map was wrong. I do not care about the map. You are contracted to me. The papers are legal and binding." Blackwood stopped an arm's length away. Up close, he smelled of tobacco and leather and something sour beneath it. "Get your things. You are coming with me now." "No." The word came out steady. "I am not." Blackwood's face darkened. "This is not a negotiation, girl. I paid the matchmaker's fee, I signed the contracts, and you accepted by taking the papers. In the eyes of the law, you are mine." She accepted nothing. Thorne's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He had moved closer without Sera noticing, placing himself slightly between her and Blackwood. "She was told the papers were for employment, not marriage. That makes the contract invalid." The matchmaker says, "The matchmaker is a half-blind old woman who mixed up two different clients." Thorne's tone did not rise, but it carried an edge now. "Sera came here looking for work with horses. I hired her. That is the end of it." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "You hired her?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I need the help and she is good at the work." "You expect me to believe that?" Blackwood's laugh was ugly. "You are keeping her for yourself. You saw an opportunity and you took it. Believe what you want. She is staying here, like hell she is." Blackwood turned back to Sera. "You do not understand the situation you are in, girl. I paid a marriage fee. If you do not honor that contract, I can take you to the magistrate and have you arrested for fraud. You will be locked up until the debt is paid, and since you are an orc, they will not be gentle about it." Fear licked up Sera's spine. She had heard stories about human jails, about what happened to orcs in human custody. "I have no money to repay you. I gave everything to the matchmaker. Then you will work off the debt in my household." Blackwood's smile did not reach his eyes. "One way or another, I will get what I paid for. She does not owe you anything." Thorne's voice had gone quiet, which somehow made it more dangerous. "The matchmaker made the error. Take your complaint to her. The matchmaker is a pauper. I will never see that money again." Blackwood jabbed a finger at Thorne's chest. "But you have horses, tack, land. You can afford to compensate me for my loss." Thorne stared at the finger against his chest, then up at Blackwood. "Move your hand, or what? Move it, or I will move it for you." For a moment, Sera thought Blackwood would push it further. Then he lowered his hand, his jaw working. "Fine. I will go to the magistrate. I will tell him you are harboring my contracted bride and refusing to release her. We will see how confident you are when the law comes knocking." He turned on his heel and mounted his horse in one aggressive motion. Before he could ride away, Thorne called out, "Blackwood!" The rancher reined in, looking back. "If you go to the magistrate, I will tell him about the boundary dispute," Thorne said quietly. "The one where you moved the fence markers on the McCready place after the old man died. I have evidence. I have sworn testimony. That case has been sitting cold for 2 years because no one would stand against you. I will reopen it." Blackwood's face went mottled red. "You have no proof." "I do. And you know it." Thorne crossed his arms. "So here is what will happen. You will go home and you will forget this contract ever existed. You will tell the matchmaker the matter is settled, and in exchange I will let the boundary dispute stay buried. Agreed?" The silence stretched long enough that Sera could hear the wind moving through the grass. Finally, Blackwood spat into the dirt. "Agreed. But mark me, Cutler, you just made an enemy." "I will survive." Blackwood rode away at a gallop, dust rising behind his horse like a storm cloud. Sera watched until he disappeared over the ridge, her heart pounding. When she looked at Thorne, he was staring at the ground, his shoulders tight. "Thank you," she said softly. "Do not thank me. I just burned a bridge with the wealthiest man in the valley." Thorne rubbed the back of his neck. "He will make trouble for me. Spread word that I am not trustworthy, interfere with my sales, maybe worse. Then I should leave. I will go tonight before he can know." Thorne looked up, and the fierceness in his eyes stopped her words. "You are staying. This is not about the contract anymore. This is about you having a choice. A choice that will cost you, so be it." "Why?" Sera took a step toward him, searching his face. "You do not know me. Why would you risk so much for a stranger?" Thorne opened his mouth, closed it, and looked away. His jaw worked as if he were chewing on words too difficult to speak. Finally, he said, "You are not a stranger, not anymore." It was not an answer, but it was as close as he could seem to come. Sera felt something warm and frightening unfurl in her chest. She knew what it was. She had been trying to ignore it all week. Every time he handed her a tool before she asked for it. Every time he made sure she ate before he did. Every time she caught him watching her with those careful, hungry eyes. She was falling in love with him. And if she was reading him right, he had already fallen. "Thorne," she said quietly, "we should talk. Later." He turned toward the house, his shoulders still tight. "I need to think about what comes next. Just go back to work, please." He left her standing in the yard, and Sera did not know whether to follow or give him the space he so clearly needed. In the end, she went back to the barn, back to the familiar comfort of horses and leather and work that made sense. Ash nickered when she entered the stall, and Sera pressed her forehead against the filly's neck, breathing in the warm smell of horse. "What do I do?" she whispered. Ash had no answer, but she stood steady and solid, and for now that was enough. The days that followed were strange. Thorne continued to work beside her, but he spoke even less than before, and he no longer watched her openly. He was pulling back, building walls, and Sera did not know how to break through them without breaking herself in the process. She threw herself into work. She rode Ash for the first time, just a quiet walk around the paddock with nothing but a halter and lead rope. The filly was perfect, responsive and calm. By the end of the second week, Ash was taking a bit without fuss and cantering in smooth circles. She would make someone a fine horse. Sera tried not to think about the fact that once Ash was fully trained, her primary value to Thorne would be gone. In the evenings, she sat in the loft and listened to him move around below. Sometimes she heard him talking to the horses, his voice too low to make out words. Once she heard what might have been her name, but she could not be sure. On the 16th day, Thorne knocked on the loft ladder after dark. "Sera, are you awake?" She climbed down, her heart in her throat. He stood at the base of the ladder, holding a lantern, his expression unreadable in the flickering light. "We need to talk," he said. "All right." He led her outside, away from the barn, to a low stone wall that overlooked the valley. The moon was nearly full, painting the hills in silver. Thorne set the lantern on the wall and stood beside it, his hands shoved in his pockets. "I have been thinking," he said, "about what Blackwood said, about the contract." "The contract is void," Sera said. "You made sure of that." "Legally, yes, but the situation has not changed. You are still an orc in human lands without papers or protection. If someone else decides to make trouble for you, I cannot always be there to stop it." Sera's chest tightened. "Are you asking me to leave?" "No." Thorne turned to face her, and the lantern light caught the sharp lines of his face. "I am asking you to marry me." The world stopped. Sera stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What? Marry me?" "Legally, in front of the magistrate and the village. If you are my wife, no one can touch you. You will have legal protection, a name that matters here, and a home that is truly yours." He spoke quickly, as if afraid he would lose his nerve. "It does not have to be real. We can keep separate rooms, live as we have been. I need to know you are safe." Sera's thoughts spun. "You want to marry me to protect me?" "Yes." "Not because you—" She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Hope was a dangerous thing, and she had learned not to trust it. "Not because what?" His voice was so quiet. "Not because you want me." The words came out broken. "Not because you feel anything for me beyond responsibility or kindness." Thorne went very still. "Is that what you think? That I feel nothing? You have barely spoken to me in days. You avoid looking at me. You flinch when I come too close." Sera wrapped her arms around herself. "I thought you regretted letting me stay. That you were trying to figure out how to send me away without cruelty." "God, no." Thorne took a step toward her, then stopped himself. Sera, I have been avoiding you because I am afraid. Of what? Of this. Of saying the wrong thing and driving you away. He dragged a hand through his hair. You are the first person in years who has looked at me like I am worth something. You work harder than any hand I have ever hired. You are brilliant with the horses, and you are so damn beautiful it hurts to look at you. I started falling in love with you the moment you caught that rope, and I have been terrified ever since that you would realize you could do better than a failing horse breeder with a grudge against the richest man in the valley. Sera's breath caught. You love me. Yes, the word was raw. I love you. I have loved you from the start, and I know I have no right to. I know you came here for work and safety, not for some scarred-up human who barely knows how to talk to people, but he stopped, his hands clenching at his sides. I am doing this badly. No. Sera closed the distance between them in 3 quick strides. She took his face in her hands, feeling the rasp of stubble against her palms. You are doing it perfectly. Sera, she kissed him. It was clumsy and desperate and everything she had been holding back for 2 weeks. Thorne made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her waist. He kissed like a man who had been starving, like she was air and water and everything he needed to survive. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sera rested her forehead against his. I love you too. I thought it was just me. I thought I was being foolish. You are not foolish. You are perfect. He kissed her again, softer this time. Will you marry me? Not for protection, not for papers, but because I want to wake up every morning knowing you are mine and I am yours. Yes. Sera laughed, the sound bright and startled. Yes, I will marry you. Thorne kissed her again, and this time when they pulled apart, he was smiling. It was the first real smile she had seen on his face, and it was glorious. They were married 3 days later in the village square, in front of the magistrate and a handful of curious onlookers. Sera wore the only good dress she owned, green wool that nearly matched her skin. Thorne wore a clean shirt and his best coat, and he did not let go of her hand the entire ceremony. The matchmaker was there, squinting at them with her rheumy eyes. Well, she wheezed. I suppose it worked out after all. You sent her to the wrong stable, Thorne said, but there was no heat in it. Did I? The old woman smiled, her bent fingers patting Sera's arm. Perhaps, or perhaps I sent her exactly where she needed to be. Sera met Thorne's eyes and saw her own thought reflected there. Maybe the matchmaker had known. Maybe she had seen something neither of them had and sent Sera down the road to the red door on purpose. It did not matter now. What mattered was this: the ring on her finger, the man beside her, and the future stretching out before them like an unbroken road. They walked back to the stable together, hand in hand. When they reached the yard, Thorne stopped and turned to her. I know we agreed to keep separate rooms. If you want that, I will respect it, but I would very much like for you to share my bed. Sera's cheeks warmed. I would like that too. They went inside together, and if the house was small and spare, it did not matter. Thorne made love to her with the same quiet intensity he brought to everything, learning her body with careful attention and responding to every sound she made. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, her head on his chest and his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. What do we do about Blackwood? Sera asked quietly. We prove him wrong. Thorne's voice was drowsy and content. We build the best stable in the valley. We breed horses people cannot resist. We make a name so strong that no one can tear it down. That will take years. Good thing we have years then. He kissed the top of her head. Sleep, love. Tomorrow we start building, and they did. The first season was hard. Blackwood made good on his threat, spreading rumors that Thorne was untrustworthy, that his horses were unsound, that anyone doing business with him was a fool. Several potential buyers turned away at the last moment, swayed by Blackwood's influence. But Sera had been right about Ash. The filly grew into a stunning mare, sound and gentle and fast. Thorne sold her to a traveling merchant who had no ties to the valley, and the merchant spread word far and wide about the quality of the horse he had purchased from the small stable with the red door. Orders began to trickle in, then to flow. By the second year, Thorne had to turn buyers away. By the third, he had a waiting list. Sera managed the books and the correspondence, her careful script filling ledgers with names and numbers that grew larger every month. She also trained every horse that came through their hands, her patient method producing animals so well-mannered that people spoke of them as if they were magic. The valley began to call her the horse whisperer. Thorne called her his wife, his partner, his love. In private, he called her his heart and she called him hers. On a bright morning in the fourth year, Sera woke to nausea and knew. She told Thorne over breakfast, watching his face shift from confusion to wonder to joy so pure it made her eyes sting. "A baby," he whispered. "A baby," she confirmed. He came around the table and knelt before her, his hands on her still flat belly. "Ours. Ours." He kissed her, then her stomach, then her again. They held each other and laughed and cried, and outside the window the horses moved through the paddocks in the golden morning light. Their daughter was born in the autumn, small and squalling and perfect. She had Sera's green skin and pointed ears, and Thorne's gray eyes and dark hair. They named her Tessa, and she was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever seen. Sera recovered slowly from the birth, but Thorne was a patient nurse, bringing her food and water and taking Tessa when Sera needed to sleep. He was besotted with the baby, carrying her around the barn and introducing her to each horse as if she could understand. Sera watched him with their daughter and fell in love with him all over again. When Tessa was 3 months old, a rider came up the road. Sera recognized the expensive horse before she saw the man on its back. Blackwood. Her hand went to the knife at her belt, but Thorne put a steady hand on her arm. "Wait," he said. Blackwood dismounted heavily. He looked older, grayer, and there was something defeated in his shoulders. He approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. "Cutler, Sera," he nodded to each of them. "I heard you had a child. Congratulations." "Thank you." Thorne's voice was wary. Blackwood shifted his weight. "I came to apologize for the trouble I caused, for the threats I made. It was wrong and I am sorry." Sera blinked, too surprised to speak. "Why now?" Thorne asked. "Because I lost my own wife this winter. She was sick for months and in the end nothing I could do saved her." Blackwood's voice was rough. "It made me think about what matters. About the mistakes I have made. I tried to buy happiness through contracts and money, and all it got me was a cold house and a reputation for cruelty. You two built something real, something I never had, even with all my wealth." He pulled a folded paper from his coat. "This is the original marriage contract, the one the matchmaker sold me. I am giving it to you free and clear. Consider it a wedding gift 4 years late." Thorne took the paper, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he offered his hand. "Thank you." Blackwood shook it, his grip firm. "You have a good life here, Cutler. Both of you, do not take it for granted." "We will not," Sera said quietly. Blackwood mounted his horse and rode away. When he was gone, Thorne held the contract over the lantern flame and let it burn. They watched the paper curl and blacken, the ashes drifting away on the wind. When it was gone, Thorne pulled Sera close and kissed her hair. "It is over," he said. "Yes," Sera agreed. "It is over." They went back to work, to the life they had built. Tessa grew from a baby into a toddler, following Sera through the barn and learning to walk by holding onto the stall rails. She was fearless, climbing on horses before she could properly talk, and both her parents watched her with hearts full to bursting. When Tessa was 2, Sera found herself pregnant again. This time it was a boy, broad-shouldered and loud. They named him Barrett, and he was his father's son in every way that mattered, quiet and watchful and endlessly patient. The stable prospered. Thorne expanded the barn, added new paddocks, and hired 2 hands to help with the increased workload. People came from 3 valleys over to buy his horses, and the name Cutler became synonymous with quality. Sera kept the books and trained the difficult cases, her reputation growing alongside her husband's. On their 10th anniversary, Thorne took her to the stone wall where he had proposed. The valley spread below them, green and golden in the evening light. Tessa and Barrett were with the hired hands, giving them a rare moment alone. "Do you remember the first day you came here?" Thorne asked, his arm around her waist. "I remember you being dragged across the dirt by a terrified horse." Sera leaned into him, smiling. "I knew then," he said. "The moment you caught that rope, I knew you were going to change my life. Did you know you would love me? Not then, but soon after, maybe the 2nd day, maybe the 3rd. He turned to face her, his gray eyes soft. "I have never regretted it, not for a single moment, neither have I." Sera cupped his face in her hands. "You gave me a home when I had none. You gave me a family. You gave me a life worth living. You gave me everything," Thorne said simply. They kissed as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. In the distance, they could hear their children laughing, the horses calling to one another, the sounds of the life they had built together. It had started with a mistake, a wrong turn down a dusty road. But it had become the rightest thing in both their lives. Sera had been sent to the wrong stable, and Thorne had chosen her before she could leave the village. He had chosen her every day since, and she had chosen him back. That was what love was in the end. Not grand gestures or perfect words, but the daily choice to stand beside someone, to build something together, and to never let go. Sera took Thorne's hand and they walked back to the stable, to the home they had made, to the family waiting for them. The red door stood open, welcoming them inside, and above it, the sign Thorne had carved swung gently in the evening breeze, Cutler Stables. Where horses learn to trust, and where 2 people, sent together by accident or fate, had learned to trust each other. They had built a life on that trust, and it had held strong through every storm. Years passed. Their family grew. Tessa became a skilled rider, competing in shows across the region and bringing home ribbons that they hung in the barn with pride. Barrett proved to have his mother's gift with difficult horses, able to gentle even the most traumatized animals with patience and care. When they were old enough, both children chose to stay and work the family business, expanding it further than Thorne had ever dreamed. Sera and Thorne grew older together, their hair going gray and silver, their hands marked by decades of work. But they still walked to the stone wall on quiet evenings, still held each other close, still chose each other every single day. When Thorne was 62 and Sera 60, they stood in the barn and looked at what they had built. 4 buildings now, instead of 1. 20 horses in the paddocks. 3 hired hands who were practically family. A reputation that stretched across the region and beyond. And their children, strong and capable and ready to carry on the legacy. "We did well," Thorne said, his arm around Sera's waist. "We did," Sera agreed. Tessa appeared in the barn door, her own child on her hip. Little Tamsin, barely a year old, with her grandmother's green skin and her grandfather's smile. "Mother, father, dinner is ready." They followed their daughter into the house, now expanded and comfortable, filled with the noise and warmth of family. Barrett was there with his wife, a human woman from the next valley who loved him fiercely and had taken the Cutler name with pride. The table was crowded, and there was laughter and good food, and the kind of contentment that comes from a life well lived. After dinner, when the children had taken the little ones to bed, Sera and Thorne sat by the fire. She leaned against him, and he held her close, and neither of them needed to speak. They had said everything that mattered over the years. Now they simply existed together, two souls who had found each other by accident and stayed together by choice. Outside, the horses settled for the night. The stable stood strong against the darkness. And inside the house, a family born from a matchmaker's error and a man's brave choice slept peacefully. Surrounded by love, Sera closed her eyes and smiled. She had been sent to the wrong stable, but Thorne had chosen her, right there in the village square before she could leave. He had stood up to a wealthy rancher and risked everything to give her a choice, and she had chosen him back. Every day, in every way, for the rest of her life. That was the story they would tell their grandchildren someday, when Tamsin and the others were old enough to understand. The story of how the matchmaker sent an orc woman to the wrong stable, and how the man who lived there chose her before she could leave the village. How he fought for her, married her, built a life with her. How love, real love, was not about grand destiny or perfect timing. It was about seeing someone, truly seeing them and deciding they were worth fighting for. Thorne had seen her. And in the end, that had made all the difference. The fire burned low. Sera's breathing deepened into sleep. Thorne held her as she dreamed, and thought about the scared orc woman who had appeared in his stable all those years ago, catching a rope and changing his life forever. He had been so lonely before her, so lost. And then she had arrived with her green skin and her bright eyes and her gift with horses, and suddenly the world had made sense. Suddenly he had something worth waking up for. He kissed the top of her head, careful not to wake her. "I love you," he whispered. In her sleep, Sera smiled and held him tighter. Outside, a late spring snow began to fall, soft and quiet. It would be gone by morning, melted away by the sun. But for now it covered the valley in white, making everything clean and new. Just like Sera had made him clean and new all those years ago. Just like they had made each other whole, the snow fell. The fire burned. And inside the house they had built together, two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way slept peacefully, surrounded by the life and the love they had chosen. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. And when morning came, they would wake up together and choose each other all over again, just as they had every day for the past 40 years. Because that was what love was. Not a contract or a destiny or a grand romantic gesture. Just the simple, daily choice to stand beside someone and say, "You are worth it. You are worth everything." Sera had been worth everything to Thorne from the moment she caught that rope. And Thorne had been worth everything to Sera from the moment he stood up to Blackwood and gave her a choice. The matchmaker had sent her to the wrong stable, but in the end it had been exactly the right place. The only place. The place where she was always meant to be, home. The snow continued to fall through the night, and in the morning the valley was white and beautiful and new. Thorne and Sera woke in each other's arms, just as they had for 40 years, and looked at each other with the same love and wonder they had felt on their wedding day. "Good morning," Thorne said, his voice still rough with sleep. "Good morning," Sera replied and kissed him. And outside, the horses began to call for their breakfast, and the stable doors opened, and another day began in the life they had built together. A life born from a mistake that became a miracle. A wrong turn that became the rightest path. An accident that became destiny. The matchmaker had sent the orc woman to the wrong stable. and the man who lived there had chosen her before she left the village. He had fought for her, married her, loved her with everything he had, and she had loved him back just as fiercely, just as completely, for the rest of their days. That was their story. That was their truth. That was the life they had built, one day and one choice at a time, until the years had passed and they were old and gray and still choosing each other, still choosing love, always.